Joining me today is Sally Jackson from The Pink Pig. So, Sally, tell the listeners about yourself.
Oh, goodness. Well, I'm 60 this year, so it's quite a long time to talk about.
Looking fabulous as well.
Of course. But anyway, yes, so brought up down south, as you can tell from my accent. Everyone calls me posh. So went to university and did chartered surveying, which is jack of all trades, master of none, which put me in good stead to be an entrepreneur, I reckon. Yep. So did surveying for a while, then met my husband, who's a farmer in Scunthorpe. So moved up here when we got married, and continued surveying up here for a few years until I decided that I really didn't want to do surveying anymore and wanted to start a business. So I started my first business, which was children's wear, back in the dark ages before the internet. So I used to have to go into the library, find fabric manufacturers, write to them or ring them, get samples. It was horrendous, thank God for the internet. Yep. And then went back surveying for a little while and then decided to set up a farm shop. Which
we know was the Pink Pig. So what was the driver for that? Why did you decide to go down that route? Can you remember?
My mum and dad are both entrepreneurs, and I think it's just in the blood. My children accuse me of having ADHD. It's never been diagnosed, and I'm sure it's rubbish. But it's called a butterfly brain. So you're constantly thinking of new ideas and new things to do, which is good for business ideas, not necessarily good for carrying it through. And my husband is probably fairly similar, so not a good combination. So everything's been an idea. Yeah, that's going to be great. Let's go and do this without really thinking it through.
Okay, so the initial challenges of setting up the Pink Pig, what were they? How do you condense that down?
Well, it happened very slowly, I guess, because we had a trestle table at the end of the drive, and then we had a little shed, and then we had a little farm shop and a restaurant, just 24 seats. So everything has happened fairly slowly, which has been good, although it's a bit frustrating, but it is good because you're earning money to put back into the business and gradually growing it. Yep. The disadvantage is that you never get to pay yourself. Having said that, I was running it with 3 small children. So actually, and I tell other entrepreneurs this, ones that are starting out, I say, your business has got to fit you.
Yeah.
So if you've got a small family, small children, you can't devote your whole attention to a business. My children call it my 4th child anyway.
Yeah.
You just cannot. So you just have to pace it. So as soon as the kids left home, suddenly everything's sort of fallen into place and got good.
So the popular child got all the attention it needed.
The popular child stayed at home and just
keeps on growing.
keeps on growing. Yeah.
So the challenges along the way then, what would you say was the biggest challenge of running the business?
I think it's not having the confidence to sort of know what you're doing. So having gone from surveying to then suddenly running a shop and a restaurant was a completely different set of skills, especially dealing with people. And people are the hardest to deal with because everybody is different. You can't treat them all the same like you can treat cheese. It's just dealing with people is tricky. But also it's one of the most fulfilling things.
Yeah.
But never go into business if you don't into a business with people if you don't like people. And I've seen lots of people do it thinking, what are you doing? You don't even like people very much and you're trying to run a hospitality business. So you've got to you've got to enjoy what you do.
Would you say it's changed you as a person, or do you think you're the same Sally Jackson that started?
No, I think I'm the same Sally Jackson that started, just a little bit older and a little bit wiser.
Okay. And in terms of your routine from the beginning, because people are always intrigued by this when you start your business and they see the owner and they have a perception of what that means and perhaps the glamorous side to it. How would you say your routine has changed from the trestle table to today?
So the trestle table had a small child underneath it on a deck chair, I think. But and I think some people are... I met 2 young ladies yesterday from a company called Deli Grays who are fantastic in Scunthorpe. And they said, we thought you'd sort of always jumped into being what you are now. And you said, well, of course not. I was, the very worried entrepreneur when you first started with 0 money behind you. So you change. I think you're trying to do everything. When you first start, you are doing everything, absolutely everything. But I learned very early on that there are some things that you cannot do. So you'll be very glad to hear this, Mark. But bookkeeping was one of them, that I'm just not... I'm not a finisher. My VAT return would never be in on time. I'm just hopeless. So you've got to recognise there are some things that you just cannot do yourself, and that you must farm them out very early on. And it may not be bookkeeping. You may be fantastic at figures. It may be something else. It may be HR. It may be buying. It may be anything else. But just recognise what you're absolute pants at and get someone else to do it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that, because I suppose in one sense when you go into business you've got to have extreme confidence in yourself because you wouldn't do it otherwise, and yet you've then got to be prepared to recognise that you don't actually know everything. It's a bit of a paradox or conflict there.
It's a mix of sort of confidence and passion, because most people set up a business because they're passionate about what they do. Probably the most successful businesses are the ones where you're not passionate about it, so you don't get dragged in and you can look at it logically. Because one of the major things was, work on, not in your business. And that's very difficult when you're starting, when you're, driving things around or trying to deal with people and trying to deal with family and trying to deal with everything. You find that you're just working like mad and not actually sitting and thinking about your business. So you do have to take time out, go and have a cup of tea. I used to go down to the M&S cafe or Debenhams when it was open and sit there just by myself, just for 3/4 of an hour, have a cup of coffee and just think about the business. Or train journeys, they were really good as well. Train journeys were good to sit and think of things, because you just don't. Your mind is busy, your life is busy, and you don't have time to think.
Okay, amongst all that, in terms of running the business and growing a business, do you have a hobby that you partake in or like to do to step away from the day-to-day?
Well, they do say that if you love your business, you'll never work another day in your life. So for years and years and years, the business has been my hobby and my life. But just recently, in the last 5 years or so, I've taken up art.
Oh, fabulous.
And then GCSE, O-level I did. O-level art, only got a C, but there's a fantastic teacher in Brigg called John Dent. And I go to him at group class once a week. And it's just a whole morning out. We rarely take days off. But it's a morning out where I don't have to think about anything, really. And I can just paint. And it's great.
Hopefully you'll provide one of them for the graphic for this podcast then, one of Sally Jackson's aims.
Oh, God.
So in terms of if I was to throw you on a desert island, then would it be your art equipment that you would take with you then, given that you've said that passion?
It'd be a rather large fridge of dry white wine, I think.
Oh, right, okay.
But then maybe if I was allowed to, I probably would take my art as well. But I would have to have my art teacher in my head then to tell me what I was doing rubbish and how I was doing okay.
Okay. Yeah. On a more serious topic and a very relevant one that can never be promoted enough, in terms of mental health, what does that phrase mean to you? How do you think employees deal with that? How do you think employees engage with their employees about it? And how do you think society is dealing with that as an issue or something that needs attention?
It's very much come to the fore, hasn't it, lately, and for all the best reasons, I think, because people have been struggling, especially through COVID. As a very glass half full person, I sometimes find it difficult to understand. And so I really have had to try to really get myself into other people's heads and try and understand, what they're going through. And I've seen it with my own family. We've all had ups and downs. And it's difficult because we're old school and you just think, pull yourself together and get on with it. And of course it's not like that. And so I think that's probably one of the things that I've had to develop more, is to try and get more empathy towards people who are struggling a bit and just to find space for them. And it's not difficult in business really to find them space and to support. You can do it without it being detrimental to your business or anything else. You can do it. I think you've just got to be more aware of what people are going through, and it's good that people are talking about stuff. That's never talked about. Nothing was talked about when I was little. It just wasn't. And so I think it's good that people are starting to talk about it. Okay,
that's encouraging. In terms of the business world, so to speak, is there anybody that you are particularly following at this moment in time, or a book in publication that you're reading that you feel that any listener would benefit from looking into?
I think there's been 3 books off the top of my head that I've really enjoyed. E-Myth is one of them, by Michael Gerber, and he sets out how that every business needs systems right from the beginning. And it could be a system to make coffee, it could be a system to wash up, it could be a system. And he writes about McDonald's, so love them or hate them, they have a turnkey system where you walk in, everything is sorted so that everything comes out the same every single time. And that's a really great book. The second one is by a guy called Seth Godin, who's wrote loads of books. But one of his best ones is called Purple Cow, and that's how to be a purple cow in a field of black and white cows.
Right.
So always to be different. You can't follow, you can look at people, you can borrow ideas, but you there's no good being like somebody else. You've got to be a little bit different. And then the last one, which I came upon within the last couple of years, is called Profit First, and I can't remember the author. But it's basically putting 10% of your turnover or a percentage of your turnover aside every month so that at the end of the year, and you forget about it, you put into an account that you can't reach. And at the end of the year, you've then got that money to decide whether to pay yourself, which is fairly revolutionary for new businesses, or whether to put it back in your business. But you've got that choice. And that really revolutionised how I thought about things, because you can't spend it. If it's not in your main account, you can't spend it. It's not there.
Yeah, it's quite easy as a business owner sometimes to overlook months and almost shoulder that burden of responsibility of being the last one to be paid. For some people that maybe don't run a business, they would think that never at all goes on. But
I've done it for 20 years. If there's not enough money in the bank, you can't pay yourself. So you can't. Luckily, I've got a husband who buys the shopping. Thank God. Sometimes it has been. It's better now, but when we were starting out, it's tricky. It is tricky, and I think that's the good thing about. I'd encourage anybody to either join a trade organisation, which I think is fantastically supportive, or to find out about local groups that get together, the North Lincolnshire Growth Group, things like that.
Right.
That where you can just come and chat to other people, because I think it just changes. It's a light bulb moment for entrepreneurs. Okay,
we'll put details of that in the graphic of the podcast so people can get in contact with that organisation and hopefully learn a bit. In 5 years' time, then, Sally, where do you see yourself? Doing another podcast.
I'm meant to doing another podcast. In theory, I should be retiring, shouldn't I? But my mum is still going. She's still running a business at 83. So I think there's a life in the old dog yet.
Oh, that's reassuring to hear. And again, focusing on yourself, but a rewind this time. What would you tell your 20-year-old self if you could? So this could be about business, about life. Is there anything that you wish you'd maybe been informed of, and it might have shaped you differently? Not that you regret anything in life, but sometimes you do maybe look back and think, I wish I'd have just known that at that point of time.
I think when you go back to your 20-year-old self, we were so concerned in getting a career, and at the time the careers that were offered were fairly straightforward. You did accountancy, you did law, you became a nurse, you did whatever. And they were very straightforward. I think there's now such a huge wealth of jobs to do out there that you don't have to follow something that you're not going to be particularly interested in. So if you feel the urge to do something, and I do feel the young people feel that they can, which is great. So I think I would have said then, do it.
Yeah, I was at the local college the other day and talking to accountancy students, and the lecturer actually, a few years older than me, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, and it was interesting to hear his account and my account of going into the accountancy industry and the social barriers that he faced, and therefore prevented him taking the career in it. And then fast forward on 15 years from when I went into it, there was still a degree of difficulty and ceilings, if you like, but marked difference between what he was able to do and what I was able to do, and it's interesting you say that. There's more opportunity. There was never.
I mean, in theory, there was a gender bias, going on back in my day. But actually, if you had enough gumption and enough, sheer bloody mindedness, you could bust through that, and I think you still can. I think if you've got the confidence or pretend the confidence, you can do anything.
I think it's a lot of the latter, the pretend the confidence thing. It's backing yourself as much as anything, and proving the doubters wrong. Because I think anybody that's gone into running an organisation or starting their own business has had to prove at least one person wrong, and that's probably themselves in certain moments.
And they always say that boys or men are much easier at fake it till you make it. But actually, and girls aren't quite so good at that. So I think we've just got to say to those girls, just go for it.
Just go, absolutely, 100%. In terms of anybody going into business then, what advice would you give to them? I suppose we've dealt a little bit there in terms of believing in yourself and going for it. But anything else that you would encourage them to either do or consider? Or
I think one of the things that somebody said to me, and it was very difficult to do, is to ask somebody to mentor you. So if there is somebody in business, and they may not have the time, but they may pass you on to somebody else. But people, now we've been in business for a long time, we're quite happy to talk to people. We're not going to sort out your business plan for you, but we're very happy to be an ear for people. And I think it's be brave enough to ask and just say, can I have half an hour of your time? And would you mind me if I bought you a coffee? And can we just sit down and have a chat? And I think that's really helpful.
Is that an area you're looking to go into more over time? Or,
I mean,
I know you do a lot already with various organisations.
Do bits and pieces. But I think yes, I think it is something that I can do when I'm supposedly retired.
Okay.
But I've got a lot. There's a lot in there, isn't there? Over 30 years, you've taken it in by osmosis, haven't you?
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of help that you can give, or just a little nudge, or whatever people need.
Okay. Back to the dry stuff, the boring stuff, and you've seen enough changes of government in your time. What would you change about the tax system as it stands, and why?
Oh, just make it simpler.
Yeah.
Oh, for God's sake. Yeah, I mean, if we could just... Yeah, it just needs to be simplified. I understand that the tax code is thousands of pages long, and how anyone can ever do it. I think you've just got a really simple system where everybody has to pay in this country, then for everything that they earn or everything that they buy or whatever it is. And you just, the big people with the big accountants just can't get away with it. Yeah. Because that's just so unfair.
Yeah, to stop the cat and mouse and just have a simple, straightforward. Yeah.
Simple, straightforward. But I'm not sure any government's going to be brave enough to do it. The hardest thing is making things simpler.
It is.
It's very easy to make things more complicated, but it's very difficult to make them simpler.
Yeah, a ground up review.
And it needs a 10-year plan cross-government. Otherwise, it's never going to happen.
We can live in hope. And your final question: what is your favourite quote or phrase, if at all you have one?
I think it's going back to the work on, not work in, and it's really hard to do. And I've really struggled over the years to do it, but every time you do take time to get out of your business and have a look at it, it's so much better. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that, Sally. That's been a pleasure. And look forward to you coming on future podcasts if you're available and you can fit me in.
Available to talk.
Absolutely. So that's a goodbye from me, Mark.
And goodbye from Sally.
Thank you. Bye.